Everyone wants to leave a legacy of positivity in the world around them. Whether you are a CEO of a Fortune 500 company, a nonprofit executive director, or even a soon-to-be entrepreneur, one fact is always true. The easiest and most effective way to catalyze change in the world around you is through commerce and through business. But how do you do it? You've come to the right place. Welcome to the Changemakers Collective, a place where people can come and get educated and encouraged and empowered to be the impact agent in the world around them. Brought to you by Silverback Ventures, Steph Thomas and Scott Woods have over 50 years combined experience helping companies and owners amplify the voice and multiply the impact of purpose-driven businesses. Join us each week as we discuss what it means to live a life of purpose on purpose.
Welcome back to the Changemakers Collective. I'm Scott. That's Steph.
Hello.
This episode I'm really excited about for selfish reasons because it's really focused in on all of my amazing students that I get to work with and all of the want-to-be entrepreneurs and even those that are especially in creative businesses. I grew up as a financial guy. I have a degree in accounting, but there's a whole pile of people that when you hear the word accounting, they break out in hives and all kinds of bad stuff happens. One of the things I want to say is kind of how I lead this conversation always with why can I talk about this? Yes, I have a degree in accounting, but my background with money is not one that you would expect, I wouldn't think. So growing up, we were a middle-class family. I don't know what that definition is now, but we had a period of time where my dad worked for a company, lost his job, and we didn't have any money. We had we had Spam and blocks of 2-pound, I don't even know if you'd call it cheese, but we had it delivered to the house.
For those that don't know, Spam is meat, not where your
not where your email
go.
goes. Yes. So we were a family of 4, and a can of Spam is probably 6 ounces of meat product.
Mm-hmm.
So we would split a can of Spam.
Wow.
For the 4 of us, and we'd get this block of cheese that literally came in a cardboard box. So we'd get a loaf of white bread, a can of Spam, and a block of government cheese every 2 weeks. So yeah, we had a period of time where it was not prosperous in our household. We would actually have, and I know I've talked to some of the people on this group of people listening about our snack when we used to get home from school. My sister and I would have sugar sandwiches.
Oh, we had ketchup sandwiches.
We'd have white bread with butter and sugar, and that was our snack for the day.
Okay, but Scott, like, all jokes aside, that's important to know, right? Because how you grow up understanding how you manage money is how you grow up and manage money.
The reason I say all that is because it definitely changed my mindset about what money was and what it was not.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a end all be all, it's a tool. And I think if you fast forward, go through college, get a gig, I'm working my tail off, and all of a sudden I lose that job for failing to commit a financial crime. And we go 6 months as a family for my family now, with no income coming in, 2 kids in private school. My wife's a stay-at-home mom. So you go 6 months without a penny coming in the door, you quickly realize your viewpoint on money has to be one that is not of money is the goal.
Right.
Money is a tool to do things. Money is a tool to be able to support what you want to do as a family. And so that's what I really want to talk about today is how do you think about money? How do you, for the non-financial people, how do you go from the structure of, hey, having your parents' credit card and having a part-time gig in college, and all you really care about is pizza money, to, oh, by the way, now you've got a full-time gig, you've got an apartment, you've got a car payment, you're trying to do some things. Everybody keeps telling you that you have to have investments. You don't really know what that is. Let's start from the beginning and really get a basic understanding of what money is and what it's not. So that's kind of the goal. The goal is to give you an education. Some of you are already going, all right, I already know that, I'm tuning out. But there's a whole pile of you that say you know it, but you don't.
Right.
So
You know what you've been raised to know.
well, you know what you hear. And so we're going to talk about, what your personal financial house looks like, right? So you've got, and all of my accounting people are going to be like, yeah, of course. And all my non-accounting people are going to be like, oh my gosh, what is he talking about?
Right.
You've got assets and you've got liabilities. If you take your assets minus your liabilities, that's what you're worth.
Right.
That's accounting 101. But that sounds some kind of way for people that aren't used to hearing those terms.
Right.
So let's break it down. Your assets are what you own. Your liabilities are what you owe. So if you have a car that's worth $30,000 and you owe $31,000, you have nothing.
You're upside down.
Yes. But
there's a lot of people on that's going to listen to this to say, I just don't have a baseline for what that looks like.
that's true. Think about what you own. It's tangible stuff that you own. Your car, your apartment, your clothes, your furniture, cash in the bank. And what you owe is all the stuff that you're writing checks for. Your car payment, your rent payment, your credit card payment you're paying off. And we're going to talk about credit cards here in a second. But understanding that your cash at the end of the month you have to make sure that you're balancing what you own versus what you owe. And the end, if you subtract from one from the other, that's in financial terms, what your net worth is.
You and I were kind of leading out in this conversation with a client, and one of the individuals that were in the room said, well, I don't know how to budget, so therefore I'm always in the red, and my credit cards are maxed out, and my student loans are there, and I'm having a baby. That's a heavy conversation.
It is a heavy conversation. And some of those you can't help, right? I mean, you have income coming in from your jobs, from investments, from inheritance, from whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And you have outflows going out. And what I want everybody to recognize is if you're just going onto online banking and saying, oh, I have $500 in my account,
I'm going to spend $450.
and not paying attention to what you have coming in and what you have going out, you're setting yourself for failure. People hate using the word budget. Nobody wants to create one. Nobody wants to be constrained by, hey, this isn't in my budget. I'm not doing any of that stuff.
I'm going to steal your thunder. Ready?
Please.
You have a fantastic budget tool.
Thank you.
That I am assuming we are going to
share with everybody.
Yeah. It is fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, I think much like the conversation we had on a prior episode about coming up with how you're selling your products and services for, this tool will allow you to plan for all of the eventualities that you have coming up. If you are a recent college grad and you want to buy a house, or you want to get rid of your beater that your grandmother handed down to you and get a car, and you want to start saving for a vacation, this tool will allow you to plan for and allocate your disposable income to those items.
So I'm sure my kid is going to call me and yell at me after he listens to this, because he does actually listen to me, which makes me excited. However, first, I grew up in a household that didn't talk about money.
Yes. There's a lot of households that are like that.
Right.
That's the reason we're having this conversation.
Right. So when I got married, I didn't understand what that looked like.
Mm.
So it just happened to be in a great marriage that we talk about money and we have a budget and we do all the right things, and yay. So my kid, I say, hey, let's talk about a budget. And we sit down with him and we're talking about a budget. And his response is, I'm a finance major. I know how to do this. So he moved out and he was like, hey, that budget tool you got? So the tool works. And if there are people that grew up in a household that didn't talk about money, you are setting yourself up for failure if you can't get a handle on these topics.
Well, much like everything else, it's okay to be ignorant once.
Yes.
If you don't know, be okay with saying, I don't know. But it is not okay to stay in a position of ignorance.
I don't know if sometimes people know they're in a stage of ignorance. But if you don't have a budget.
If you are struggling to figure out how to pay your bills and you are constantly getting a notification that, hey, this bill's late and that bill's late, and you're struggling to figure out how you're going to pay for your upcoming vacation, you need the tool that we're going to offer you.
If you have late bills, should you take a vacation?
No.
Okay, thank you.
This is something I just don't understand. This is something I just don't understand. We live in a society where everybody's taking vacations 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and always planning for the next one. And I'm like, you can't afford to fix your car, yet you're going on vacation. I would say your priorities are a wee bit
Off.
skewed.
So for those that are wanted to figure out how to do a budget, and they then download the tool, reach out to us, whatever. For entrepreneurs, a budget in your personal life and a budget in your business are necessities.
Yeah, 1,000%. And we've talked about this previously when we talked about stewardship and giving and everything else. If you're not paying attention to the inflows and outflows, both personally and professionally, let's take it away from the downside that, hey, you're going to not be able to pay your bills, and think about the upside that you aren't going to be looking for opportunities to multiply that money.
Right.
Right. We'll talk about investments. There's a tons and tons and tons of ways to make money. We've talked about in previous episodes, the simplest high yield savings account from American Express, currently paying just over 4 something, 4% interest.
I think, right.
Most of the big banks that you see on television all the time are paying 0.1.
If.
So why would you not take a portion of your pay and stick it in some place that's going to give you 5% interest or 4% interest? To speculative, higher risk investments where you're investing in the stock market. I want to touch on crypto investments in a second, but let's talk about traditional investments, right? So you've got bank related stuff, savings account, CDs. Typically in 2024, those are not paying as much interest as you would get in some higher risk investment. However,
or 2025
or 2025. Yeah. That's guaranteed money.
Right.
You leave it in there, they pay you.
Right.
You don't have a chance of losing it. Take advantage of that stuff. But if you're not budgeting, you don't know how much you can put in these investment vehicles to pay for the things you want to pay for.
So the person that asked about, okay, I'm having a baby, I don't know what to do. And they had said they just got a raise. And I said, okay, but when you got a raise, what did you do with the money? Did you invest it? Did you, and well, no, I mean, it just kind of disappeared. And I said, okay. Those are opportunities. When you get a raise, when you get an inheritance, that's an opportunity to not go buy a new pair of shoes.
Yeah, it's about priorities, right? I mean, I think one of the things that my wife and I did after we had that situation where we were out of cash for 6 months, we recognized that our lifestyle was supported by a much lower dollar amount than we thought was necessary. When I
Right.
started the first business, I recognized, okay, you
I
know
don't need
what?
that much
I
to
don't
live on.
need I don't need as much as I was making as a W-2 employee in order to support my lifestyle as an entrepreneur.
Okay, well, think about this, right? When your father lost his job,
Mhm.
you probably went from eating steak to eating Spam.
Yeah, at least chicken to Spam.
Right. So you still ate.
Yeah, yeah.
And sometimes you have to make sacrifices to correct some
I can
poor
tell you what we
decisions.
didn't do. We didn't go on a vacation.
Yeah.
Or
Buy a new car.
we changed our vacation and paid $2 to go to a state park.
There you go.
Right.
Or
So it's all about management. It's
right.
about management. You again, if your mindset is that money is a end goal, the more you have, the better you are. You're going to constantly be chasing after the next thing.
Right.
Whereas if you view money as what it is, it's a tool to exchange for experience.
Sometimes when we're sitting with a client, you'll say, you need to do X, Y, Z, and how do you do it for free?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of the same thing. Everybody needs a mental break. That's why people take vacations. But what can you do for free? Can
Yeah.
you take a day trip to the
Yeah.
beach? Can
Yeah.
you go
Yeah.
for a walk in the park?
Yeah. Kristen, you were going to ask a question.
Kristen from Nava Studios.
Okay, it seems like I know you started to delve into the investing, but it sounds like there's a lot of mindset in this. And so this feels like a setup to like a part 2 where we actually dive into the investing and strategies to actually make money. But you talked about priorities, not just priorities, but putting off future you, like the long-term gain versus the short-term gain. And especially if you're speaking to younger people, they might not relate to having a family yet. But if they see influencers online and they're traveling to this country, that country, and oh, you can just do this, not knowing that they're getting that trip for free or they're putting it on a credit card and they're up to their neck in debt and they're never going to show that. So maybe also speaking to like, why are you taking that vacation?
Yes, come on. We talk about, I use the phrase all the time, don't sacrifice a short-term benefit for a long-term consequence.
Mm-hmm.
And let's talk about credit cards for a second. I had the opportunity, the blessing to be able to speak to the University of Miami football team about this same topic. And I had one young man say, oh, I'm never going to get a credit card because my parents said they were evil and I'll always be in debt and they're designed to keep us in debt forever. And I looked at him and I said, well, if your viewpoint on money as a tool versus as a way to just buy stuff you don't need, you now shift into a place where if you have the right credit card vehicle, you can build wealth on that credit card. So let's talk about that for a second. I know when I was in college, I got a Discover credit card.
Oh my goodness.
Wait, the only reason I got it is because they came on campus and they were giving away free hats.
Mm-hmm.
I put on this application that I made no money, had no job, and they gave me a credit card that I still have in a drawer that I've never used because I got a free hat out of it.
If you happen to be a part of the population that are getting ready to go to college, there are people that are sitting there that want to give you a credit card. That does not mean you need it.
Yes. National credit card debt is now $18 trillion.
Mercy.
Personal credit card debt. I just saw a statistic about $18 trillion.
We're not knocking credit cards. I have a credit card.
No.
Right.
No. Quite the opposite.
Right.
You need to get a credit card.
Yes.
When our kids were seniors in high school, both of them got a credit card. Both of them got a credit card that had no annual fee. Do not, under any circumstances, pay an annual fee for a credit card.
Let me ask
I
you a
don't
question.
care what it's given you. Do not pay an annual fee.
So what we did, my husband and I, we put one child, I have 2 kids, we put one child as a authorized user on one person's credit card and my husband put the other kid on one just until they at least had some credit, because most people with 0 credit, there is an annual fee. if you have an annual fee and you have taken a year to responsibly use it, you can get a different credit card almost
Yeah,
immediately.
I would say you got to go to a different bank.
Yeah, okay.
Right? I mean, we said, and again, this could be just from my experience growing up where money was scarce and
Mhm.
I was feeling some kind of way about I don't ever want to be in a position or have my family in a position that I was in. Now, it was no fault of my parents.
Right.
That was just a
Just life
circumstance that
happened
happened
at
to
that
them.
time. Mhm.
However, I want to make sure that I'm managing my money in a way that if that happens, which it did, twice actually, um, 3 times really, that we're not gonna be hurt by it.
Right.
So, I would say from a credit card perspective, we went to our existing bank and said, "We need a student credit card. I don't care if you give them $500 worth of credit, I'm not paying a fee."
Right.
They got their own credit cards, and what we told them is, like, the very first time you miss a payment, you gotta give it back.
Right.
So we also talked to them about the fact that you can get a credit card with no annual fee and you get one that has rewards on the back end.
Mhm.
Get one. So they both have BOA cards.
Mhm. They
Um,
have a great program for students.
they do have a great program
Mhm.
for students. So they have a no annual fee card and it pays you cash back on your purchases depending on the category.
Mhm.
Now, you got a $500 limit. You're not going to make $1 million, but you're also going to be given money to use the card. And at the same time, you're building your personal credit. So when you get out of school and you're getting ready to get your car, you don't have to have your parents
Okay.
co-sign for it.
Scott, let's talk about this before you move on to that. What do you put on the credit card?
This is a great question.
Do you go on
However,
vacation?
the
I'm
way
just
we
kidding.
talked to them about the credit card was never put something on the credit card that you couldn't pay cash for.
Right. Right.
When you first start. Now, as you get to be a little bit more mature in your credit history and mature in your financial acumen, we put everything on the credit card because we get benefits,
Right.
right? When I first started, when first moved down here, I was working for a consulting firm and I would travel 4 days a week. I'd put everything on my American Express card because one, the company was reimbursing me, and two, I got hotel points
Right.
every dollar I spent.
Okay, so stay right there. There are different benefits, right? So Discover gives cash back,
Mhm.
but that means that you are what people don't understand is they don't give cash back if you're running a debt. They give
Oh, no.
cash back
No.
when you purchase and you pay. So if you were to put your gas on the credit card because you would normally pay for gas, you turn around and you pay that off immediately.
Yeah, you cannot think of a credit card as a blank check to spend.
Right.
Again, if you are, because let's talk about debt for a second.
Right.
That what you owe, the credit card companies are great about giving you the ability to buy something today that you may not be able to pay for until tomorrow.
Right.
That's awesome. But they charge you a fee for doing that.
N-
If you don't pay,
19 or 24%.
if you don't pay your full balance at the end of the month, you're paying anywhere from, let's just call it 20%
Right.
for kicks and giggles. 20% of $100 is an extra $20 per month, in addition to the late fee that are going to charge you.
Right. If you run up your credit card and you only pay the minimum balance,
You now on your credit card, it'll actually say if you only make the minimum payment,
it'll take
it's
you
going to take
35
you
years.
35 years to
Right.
pay it off. And you're going to pay
So-
this much in interest.
And I didn't mean to change the subject, but
No,
so
that's a
there's
good
2 points,
topic.
right?
Mhm.
If you are getting benefits, what are the benefits and why are they for? If you need them to travel, much like you
Mhm.
said, so I'm in a business and I'm traveling all over the world, then probably a mileage credit card is your benefit. If you are buying gas and groceries or whatever, then something that gives a cash back is more. And you can use your cash back to actually pay your credit card.
Oh, 100%.
Right.
Well, that's what I'm saying. There is, credit cards are not evil.
Right.
Money is not evil. The idolization of money
Is evil.
is a problem
Mhm.
because you're going to be chasing after it and chasing after it and chasing after it and chasing after it. You're never going to have enough. if you use your credit cards wisely, like we have one credit card that's tied to our Amazon account and tied to any kind of travel that pays us and mileage. So if we go to travel, we do that.
Right.
I've got another one that is used, and I almost use it exclusively for gas and meals because I get a higher percentage of cash back on gas and meals.
Right.
Well, at the end of every month, I'm paying for a meal out just from the cash back.
Right.
And I don't pay an annual fee on either one of them.
Right.
And I pay it off every single month. Now, could I pay cash for some of those things? Of course. In the beginning, if you're a college student, you're getting ready to get out of school, you're getting your first credit card or whatever. Always, if you're going to use your credit card, use it, but only for things that you could have bought anyway.
Right. That you're going to pay back.
Yeah.
Right
You
then.
have, and do not, under any circumstances, carry a balance. It is going to. I have a friend of mine who owns a business and put all of his startup costs on his credit card personally. He was paying $480 a month
Wow.
in interest.
Wow.
And I'm like, dude, what are you doing?
It's just a bad investment on yourself.
I love that you said it that way, because if you're carrying a balance on your credit card and you're getting charged 20% interest, paying off that credit card to zero gives you a return of investment of 20%. You're making 20% interest on your money. You cannot invest in anything and get a 20% return in a month. So when you say, hey, I'm a young person and I want to invest my money because I just got a raise. And so you're going out into the stock market and getting a mutual fund and investing in stocks, and it's really exciting, but you're carrying a $10,000 worth of credit card debt that you're getting charged 20% a month on. You're losing. And net result is you're losing.
Right.
Pay off your credit card debt. You're making 20% of your money right there. Once that's paid off, then go into investing.
So let's talk about that for a second, because this is kind of the conversation that I had with the employee that I brought up in the beginning. Okay, where do I start?
Yes.
So there are various ways to do this, but successfully. So I happened to, I got out of college. My husband got out of college. We had college debt. Then we started having children, and then we bought a house. And so we're paying student loans, and we had credit card debt. And I mean, we just did all the wrong things, again, because my parents didn't have
the
conversations with me. So we took a class, and the way that we did it was we paid the littlest thing first. Right. So, if you owed $50 on this and you owed $500 on this, you paid the $50 off first. Mentally, you feel good about yourself.
You got to win.
Right. But what started happening was I then took that $50, it's called a snowball, right? You take that $50 plus what you're paying on everything else. And you wake up one day and you're like, I've paid everything off. But we don't get back in debt.
No, you have to start, right? I mean, I think that's the whole thing. My sister went through a phase where she ran up a bunch of credit card debt, and for no fault of her own, she didn't have another means. And she did the exact same thing. You just got to chunk it away. And I would say, in response to your, hey, I want to pay off the littlest balance first, I would say pay off the one that's charging the most first.
Charging the most interest.
Right. So if if you had a student loan where you owed $50 and it was charging you 5%, and you had a credit card that was $500 and it was charging you 20%, your biggest bang for your buck is to pay off the credit card, even though this one's going to be sitting there.
So Scott, it's funny that you said that, because I mean, I felt like I was drowning in debt. I mean, I was struggling. So doing the smallest one first to get wins. But now, my husband and I sit down weekly, monthly, semi-annually, and annually, and we talk about where every dime is going. Every dime goes somewhere. And we do that. Like, okay, what's the highest interest? Somebody needs a car. So we're paying that off first, because I don't want you to use my money.
Yeah, 100%. Let's talk about cars for a second.
Okay.
You go into the dealership and they say, hey, we'll give you $5,000 cash back or give you 0.9% financing. Which is a better deal? I have that conversation all the time. I said, you're going to give me $5,000, but you're going to charge me $30,000 at 6.9% interest. Or you're not going to give me the $5,000 and I'm going to pay 0.9% interest.
Mhm.
Pay 0.9%
Yeah, I was
interest.
just say take the lower interest rate.
And again, this is something that, yeah, I have an advantage having a financial education in the background. But if you don't manage your money's going to manage you.
Well, and here's
You have to
another
take
thing.
personal responsibility for that.
Here's another thing. We make emotional purchases as humans, right?
Oh, absolutely. Everybody goes in their closet and goes, oh, yeah, no, probably shouldn't have done that.
Right. But you're buying a car, right? And you probably are making a X amount of money and you can afford this car.
Yep.
But you lose your job and you're eating Spam.
Yep.
And now you've got a car payment that really you could afford, but now you cannot. It's a snowball effect of bad things that can happen. So again, prioritize, right? Live in your means. You don't need to come out of college and own an $80,000 vehicle and a student loan.
Yeah. I think there is a mentality that money equals value individually. And the more money I make, the more valuable I am as a human being. That's just simply not true.
Right.
I mean, we've talked about it. I've talked about it with all my students that, since they started recording a census in ancient Mesopotamia, there's been 107 billion people. And there's never been another individual that's the same as you. Never. You're one of one in all of history. Whether you make $1 or you make $100 bazillion, it doesn't matter. You're still one of one. More rare than any gem, any snowflake nut. You have no equal. So the society and the marketers and those that are promoting you buying their stuff, the aspirational purchases will point you in a direction where your value is determined by how much money you make and what toys you have.
Well, okay, reality. We live in a society where every time we click, every time we speak, every time we watch, there is an algorithm that produces a mass marketing campaign based on that.
Targeted ad.
So first you make emotional decisions to buy stuff. You make decisions based on how often it enters your eye gate, and then you make a self-value. Okay. As new people coming out of college, starting new businesses, living in a life of debt, or either being set up for success, you still have to pay attention to all of those areas so that you're making sound decisions constantly.
Well, if you recognize that your value is not in your inherent value as a human is not based on what you do or how much money you have, it changes the way you look at those purchases. It changes the way you look at your Instagram. It changes the way you look at the comparisons of the person next to you, because you go, all right, well, that's good for them. It'd be cool if I was able to drive a, whatever
$80,000 vehicle.
Is it going to make me feel different about myself? Is it going to make me inherently more valuable as a person? Is it going to make me more, ultimately, is it going to make me happy? Some of the most miserable people you could ever meet are the ones with the most money.
I used to work for a company, and the owner of the company drove a Maserati. And they said, and it was a sales company, and they said, well, I have to drive where the car that makes me look like the place that I want to be. And I said, well, that's just simply not true. It's just simply not true. Most people could care less what car that you drive. So when you place that into an entrepreneur or a life skills lesson, That's a problem if that's the mindset.
Yeah. I mean, financial literacy, we started this episode to talk about what it means to have the right relationship with money.
Hmm.
How do I think about the balance of what I owe versus what I own? And how do we
Assets
think
versus
about
liability.
assets versus liabilities? It's a balance.
Hmm.
And you always want your assets to be greater than your liabilities. Then you know you have something. You also want to make sure that you're not letting companies take your money and giving you nothing. Don't run up credit card debt. Don't pay an annual fee. Pay down your debt that you have, and you're just putting money in your pocket. That same gentleman that rang up all that money for his business startup expense, we refinanced it for a term loan, and he went from paying 20% down to 5%.
Hmm.
And I remember him calling me going, dude, I have like an extra $300 in my account every single month. I'm like,
You don't
yeah.
say. So, Scott, my nephew, who really does a great job with money, this would be a good use of credit card
Mhm.
and debt. So he looked at his student loans, and anybody that has student loans has 13 variations of a
Oh, sure,
loan,
sure.
and they put them all together and you pay. So what he started doing, which I thought was great, because you pay an interest, you pay all kinds of things on your
Mhm.
student loan. He would take chunks that he felt comfortable that he could pay by the end of the year and put it on a zero interest 12-month plan.
Mhm.
So he was paying down his student loans regularly, but he was also paying a portion without any interest. Uh, and he was growing his credit score. I mean, he
Mhm.
was doing all the right things. That is a good way to do that.
And again, all of that comes down to understanding your inflows and your outflows.
Mm-hmm.
You can't have that discussion unless you know where your money's going and where it's coming from. You can't have the discussion, your weekly, monthly, annual things. Part of that discussion that you didn't say was that's where you sit down and go, okay, how are we going to use the tool of excess cash to better serve our family?
Mm-hmm.
Do we need a new refrigerator? Do we need to put an addition on
That's
our
a sore
house?
subject.
Yes, that's why I said that.
Right.
Do we need to pay for college? If you're not planning for that, you're going to get to the point where you have to outlay that money and go, okay, I don't know how I'm going to do that.
Right.
Our daughter's getting ready to get married. We started planning for that eventuality before she went to college and said,
Right.
okay, as we get raises, if our situation changes and we find ourselves in a more expensive area, or we find ourselves in a situation where inflation has gone crazy, okay. But if not, there's no reason to just spend more.
Right.
Why? Because our inherent value is not based on how much money is in our bank account. So it didn't bring us any additional happiness to have more junk. Anybody who has moved recognizes that you accumulate a lot of worthless
Yes.
junk every time you spend money, and every time you go, oh yeah, this is going to be awesome, we're going to have this forever, and then it just sits around and you end up throwing it away or giving it away at a garage sale. Your relationship with money has to be thought through as a tool for something you want to experience, and not the end result you're trying to accomplish.
Well, as you live a life of purpose on purpose, you got to budget, you got to manage, you got to do all the things. And I know that this is a topic that we definitely need to come back to
we'll
again.
come back to and talk about, we had an episode where we talked about, from a business perspective, what do you do with the excess cash you have at the end of the year?
Mhm.
What we want to talk about next is how do you take as you get those raises. It is always funny. I remember going to the bank machine when I was in college, and my balance was $2.38.
Oh, I've been there.
And I was working.
And I had to put gas in the
I was
car.
working full time. I was working full time. I had a student loans, and I had a work study program where I was working for the university full time, and I had $2.38 in my account.
Ugh.
I don't want to ever
Be in that
be in that
situation
situation again. And it helped me to understand my relationship with money was I needed that money to do what I wanted to do. And if I wanted to go on vacation, I knew I had to trade work for vacation.
Right.
If you get nothing else other than that, that's an important nugget. Every time you spend $1, you have to think about how much you had to work to get that
Oh, my
dollar.
husband says that to my kids all the time. And when they started saying, "Oh my goodness, I had to work all day for this," it brings.
I
So
remember our daughter saying, "Hey, I want a pair of these new sneakers." And I said, "Well, how much do you have to work
mm,
in order to get those?" And she's like, "Oh, all right, well, maybe I don't want those as much anymore."
right.
So think about spending in terms of hours have to work. And then we'll talk next time about our investments and how
Right.
you make money on top of money.
So until next time, make sure you download the
Little
budget.
budget tool.
Send this to somebody that can use a little bit of help with managing their finances. Thank you for listening to the Changemakers Collective. If you've enjoyed this episode, please help us grow our community by leaving us a review on Apple Podcast or rating us on Spotify.
You can also find our podcast on YouTube, so you can come and leave us a comment over there as well. If you want support growing your business and scaling your vision, visit us at silverbackventures.org or connect with us on LinkedIn.
Thanks again, and we'll see you on our next episode.